At 64, Val Kilmer finally admits why he'll never marry, surprising fans who thought he'd find love again after his first divorce. Many believed he'd remarry, especially with so many admirers, but he didn't. Join us as we reveal the emotional reason behind that choice. Val Kilmer's heartbreak story. As someone that was once admired as Hollywood's most adored heartthrobs, nobody expected Val to spend his final years in quiet solitude, far from the flashing lights and glamorous parties that once defined his life. Known for playing unforgettable roles in films like Batman Forever and The Doors, Val had once been the man every woman wanted and every man admired. But behind the fame, the fortune, and the striking good looks was a man whose heart had been deeply bruised by love. In the early days of his career, Val's romantic life was as famous as his film roles. He dated a string of stunning, successful women, icons like Cher, Angelina Jolie, Cindy Crawford, and Michelle Pfeiffer. His charm, confidence, and poetic nature made him irresistible. But even though his love life was filled with beautiful moments and glamorous relationships, none of them ever truly lasted. And eventually, the passionate actor who had once been surrounded by love and attention found himself alone. Val's only marriage was to British actress Joanne Whalley, and after this marriage, his life suddenly went to the bad side of love. Val and Joanne met in 1987 while working on the movie Willow, and not long after, they tied the knot. Their love story felt like something out of a fairy tale. Together, they had 2 children, Mercedes and Jack, who brought joy and light into their lives. But despite the happy beginning, the relationship ended in divorce in 1996. Val always held a soft spot for Joanne, describing her as one of the deepest loves of his life. As time went on, Val continued to fall in and out of love. Each relationship seemed to promise something special, but nothing ever lasted. Still, he never stopped believing in love, even when it slipped away again and again. But it was his short romance with actress Daryl Hannah that left the most lasting wound on his heart. In the early 2000s, the two connected deeply, and Val believed she was the one. He admitted that his heartbreak after losing her was unlike anything he had ever felt. For months after their breakup, he cried every single day. Even years later, he confessed that his love for Daryl never faded. While Daryl moved on with her life and eventually married musician Neil Young in 2018, Val held on to the love he had for her like a precious memory he couldn't let go. His emotional pain ran so deep that he stopped pursuing romantic relationships altogether. He spent over 2 decades without a girlfriend or a partner by his side. In the quiet of his home, away from the noise of Hollywood, Val lived with the weight of loneliness that he never tried to hide. He openly said that being alone was hard and that he felt the ache of it nearly every day. According to him, this was an honest confession and not a bitter one. Apart from making such a confession, he always appreciated women deeply. He once reflected that men were like clumsy giants, while women were graceful and mysterious, comparing them to butterflies. It was clear he never lost his admiration for the beauty and complexity of women, even when he chose to live without one in his life. Aside from experiencing multiple heartbreaks, part of the reasons he stayed away from relationships later in life was because of his health. In 2015, Val was diagnosed with throat cancer. It was a terrifying chapter in his life that changed everything. He went through difficult treatments, including chemotherapy, radiation, and a tracheotomy that left him struggling to speak. For someone whose voice had once captured audiences in every role he played, losing it was a heavy blow. But Val didn't give up. He turned to his Christian Science faith and leaned on prayer to find peace and healing. And even in the darkness, there were bright lights like Cher. the lady who stood by him during his illness. Despite their romantic relationship having ended decades earlier, she remained a loyal friend, offering love and support that meant the world to him. And fortunately for Val, he beat cancer. After years of treatment and prayer, he proudly shared that he had been cancer-free for more than 4 years, and there were no signs of it returning. He was grateful for every single day and made it clear that he didn't take his recovery for granted. Even though his body had changed and his voice was different, his heart remained full of creativity and a desire to express himself. He continued performing in a one-man show as Mark Twain and made a stunning return to the big screen in Top Gun: Maverick, reprising his beloved role as Iceman. It was a powerful comeback that reminded the world of his strength, both as an actor and a human being. In his memoir, I'm Your Huckleberry, Val shared his truth without holding back. He talked about his loneliness, his longing for love, and the emotional scars left behind by failed relationships. He wasn't ashamed to say that he missed having someone to share his life with. But he also found peace in solitude. He embraced the quiet, the stillness, and the memories of the people he had loved. Though he was no longer the heartthrob gracing magazine covers, he was still the same man, sensitive, passionate, and real. Val may have never married again or found another great romance after his first marriage, but he found a kind of peace in accepting life as it came. You might be wondering why everyone was expecting Val to marry another lovely woman. Well, the answer to your thoughts lies in the kind of life he lived on the screen. For a better understanding, keep watching as we take a step back to how he captivated everyone's heart by just appearing on their screen. Laying the fame foundation. At just 17 years old, Val Kilmer reached an incredible milestone by becoming one of the youngest people ever accepted into Juilliard's famous drama school. This wasn't just a big moment in his life, it was the beginning of something much deeper. It was at Juilliard that Val didn't just learn how to act, he discovered who he really was as an artist. The school became more than just a place to practice lines or memorize scripts. It was where he learned how to turn his personal struggles and emotional wounds into something powerful and beautiful. Val didn't just stick to acting. He also poured his heart into writing, crafting stories that showed just how thoughtful and emotional he was, even as a teenager. One of his early pieces, titled How It All Began, revealed a young man trying to make sense of the world, using his words like a flashlight in the dark. He was always digging for something deeper, something real, something true. Even though Juilliard was filled with extremely talented students, Val stood out. Role after role, project after project, he kept proving that he belonged. He learned lessons that went beyond the classroom, lessons about survival, strength, and what it really takes to make it in an industry that can be both thrilling and brutal. Every moment on stage was more than a performance. It was a healing step, helping him move past the pain of his younger years and closer to the spotlight he was meant for. When the 1990s rolled in, Val Kilmer had already walked through fire, and it showed. This was the decade that made him a star. His face lit up the big screen, but it was his heart and talent that left audiences speechless. His roles weren't just well acted, they were lived. One of his most unforgettable performances came in 1991 when he played Jim Morrison in The Doors. People didn't just see Morrison on the screen, they felt his actual presence there. That's because Val didn't pretend to be the rock legend. He became him. To prepare, Val trained his voice to match Morrison's exactly. He studied how he moved, how he stared, even how he stayed quiet. For months, he listened to Morrison's music every single day, trying to crawl inside the artist's troubled soul. He later confessed that the role took everything out of him. After the movie ended, it wasn't easy to let go of Morrison. The emotional weight stuck with him for a long time. But Val didn't stop there. He kept showing new sides of himself, proving that he was more than just one amazing performance. In 1993, he transformed again, this time into Doc Holliday in the Western film Tombstone. While Morrison showed how deeply he could feel, Doc showed how sharp, charming, and clever he could be. Val's version of Doc was fearless, funny, and full of life. Audiences loved him, and many people say this was his greatest performance ever. There was something about the way he delivered each line that stuck with people long after the credits rolled. One of his lines even became a piece of movie history, quoted and remembered by fans everywhere. Val Kilmer's time on stage and screen wasn't just about fame. It was about heart, truth, and the courage to pour his soul into every single role. In 1995, Val Kilmer stepped into the shoes of Bruce Wayne, taking on the iconic role of Batman in Batman Forever. It was a bold move, especially since he had to follow in the footsteps of Michael Keaton, who had already won over fans with his version of the character. The movie itself got a mix of praise and criticism, but Val brought something different to the screen. His Batman wasn't just a hero in a mask. He showed a quieter, more thoughtful side of Bruce Wayne, a man torn between duty and personal struggles. But what the audience didn't see was how tough it was for Val behind the scenes. He later opened up about how uncomfortable it was wearing the Batman suit. It was heavy, stiff, and incredibly hot. Yet even through that discomfort, Val found something meaningful. He said it helped him understand how Batman felt, trapped by his responsibilities and burdened by what he had to carry, both as a person and a hero. That same year, Val made another unforgettable appearance in the crime film Heat, where he acted alongside two of Hollywood's most respected legends, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. Though Val wasn't the main star, his performance stood out. He played a complicated character, one who brought raw emotion and tension to every scene. His quiet intensity proved once again that Val didn't need the spotlight to leave a mark. He had a way of pulling viewers into the story with just his presence. The 1990s were the true highlight of Val Kilmer's career. They showed just how fearless and dedicated he was when it came to acting. He didn't choose easy roles or safe paths. He took on characters that demanded everything from him. The demands were usually mentally, emotionally, and even physically. He wasn't just acting for applause. He was constantly pushing himself to new limits, always trying to reach deeper into the art. But chasing that level of perfection came at a cost. Off-camera, Val had to face intense pressure. From demanding expectations he placed on himself to difficult working conditions on set, the journey was never easy. Those struggles began to take a toll, not just on his body, but on the path of his entire career. The truth is, behind all the praise and powerful roles, there were parts of his story that remained hidden. There were private battles and quiet corners of his life that few people ever knew about. What many didn't see was that Val Kilmer wasn't just any actor. He was someone so committed to his craft that it often became an obsession. Yes, being obsessed with his work helped him attain so much success. But wait till you see how much it affected him in other aspects of his life. What everyone never knew about his fame. When he played Jim Morrison in The Doors, he didn't just pretend to be the rock star, he actually became him. Val studied every lyric, every move, and even trained his voice to sound exactly like Morrison. He lived and breathed the role so completely that crew members on set sometimes couldn't tell if they were talking to Val or Jim. That kind of full-body dedication amazed critics and turned his performance into something unforgettable. He didn't just play a role, GHE brought a legend back to life. Still, working that intensely had its downsides. Some people on set described Val as difficult, especially during large productions like Batman Forever. He often had strong ideas about how a character should be portrayed, which led to disagreements with directors. Joel Schumacher, the director of the film, once said Val was a brilliant actor, but he also brought a lot of tension to the set because of his high standards. However, not everyone saw that as a bad thing. Many actors who worked with him admired his focus and his passion. For instance, Kurt Russell, his co-star in Tombstone, once said that Val's performance lifted the whole movie. He believed Val understood Doc Holliday better than anyone ever could and made the character unforgettable. Underneath his serious face and perfectionist habits was someone deeply sensitive and an artist who cared more about truth than applause. Val never acted just to be popular. He acted because he believed the audience deserved something real. That's why he poured so much energy into studying scripts, learning every detail about his roles, and practicing for hours. Every time he stepped on screen, he didn't want to just entertain, he wanted to create something meaningful. But striving for perfection often meant he was alone. People called him stubborn. They said he was hard to work with. Yet he never let those comments distract him from his goal. Val Kilmer wanted to make art that mattered. He believed acting wasn't just a job. It was a path to discover truth, both in the characters and in himself. That belief shaped everything he did and left a legacy that audiences still remember with admiration and awe. Val Kilmer didn't just play roles in movies, he brought real emotion to each one, making people feel something deeper. That's why films like Top Gun, The Doors, and Tombstone are remembered not just for their stories, but for the powerful way he performed. His fans could see his heart behind every character. Val himself knew that his strong commitment to acting sometimes made people misunderstand him, but he once admitted he didn't mind being judged wrongly if it meant staying true to himself. That strong belief helped him keep going through all the noise, leaving behind a body of work that people still admire today. Even though he once stood as one of the most loved and talented stars in Hollywood, Val carried a sadness that many never saw. While his fame grew, behind the curtain, he had personal heartbreaks that deeply shaped who he was. This is probably something you never knew about Val, so stay tuned to unveil the most sensitive part of his life. Various troubles and controversies. By examining Val's life, you will find out his painful experiences started from his childhood days. Everything started falling apart when his older brother, Wesley, passed away from epilepsy at just 15. Wesley was someone who was full of creativity, and aside from being very creative, Val looked up to him. Wesley wasn't just a sibling, he was Val's safe space, the one who made him feel seen and loved. Losing him left a hole in Val's heart that never really healed. Years later, even in interviews, Val would bring up his brother with tears in his voice and a soft longing that never faded. When Val made it big in Hollywood, everything seemed to shine. He had money, fans, and exciting roles. Then, in 1988, he got married to the love of his life at that moment. With this little achievement, it looked like he finally found calmness away from the spotlight. But that peace didn't last. Just 8 years into the marriage, it ended in divorce. Val once said Joanne was the kindest woman he had ever loved, and losing her broke something inside him. After that, he had to figure out how to be a good father while still chasing a career that was slowly getting harder to hold on to. As the 2000s came, Val tried to bring back the spark of his earlier success. But times had changed. The big roles that once came easily were now going to others. The movie world that once welcomed him with open arms no longer gave him the kind of challenging roles he loved. Instead, he found himself in smaller films or side parts that didn't get much attention. Still, he put his heart into every role. But his name no longer pulled crowds to theaters like it used to. Stories about him being hard to work with only made things worse. Some people thought he was too demanding, while others believed it just showed how deeply he cared about his work. It wasn't just his career that started to fall apart. His finances took a hit too. The lifestyle he once lived with comfort turned into a struggle. Bills piled up. To get through it, he had to let go of things he once held dear, like his house in New Mexico, a place he had always called his peaceful getaway. Pictures began to show him arriving at events alone, without the usual buzz of fame around him. The sparkle that once followed him started to dim. All that was left was a man who had given his soul to acting, now walking quietly through life's hard seasons. Even when life threw its hardest punches, Val Kilmer always held close to what mattered most, which was his children. Mercedes and Jack weren't just his kids. They were his anchor during the storm. They gave him strength when everything around him felt like it was falling apart. People would often see them together at public events, and the smiles they shared weren't for the cameras. They came straight from the heart. That pure bond, that special love between them, was something no fame or failure could ever take away from him. But love from his children wasn't the only thing Val had to lean on. Those years also brought him serious problems, ones that went beyond money and loneliness. His name started popping up in stories that painted him in a difficult light. Controversies and behind-the-scenes gossip followed him, making people question the man they once adored on screen. But were all those tales fair? Or was Val just misunderstood? One of the biggest stories people still talk about is what happened during the filming of Batman Forever. Even though many fans loved him as Batman, things on set were far from smooth. The director, Joel Schumacher, once said working with Val felt like a nightmare. Val had strong opinions, not just about his lines, but also about how the movie should be made. He often clashed with the team, wanting everything to be perfect. Some said he made things harder, but others who knew him insisted he just cared too much. To them, he wasn't being difficult. He was being an artist with high standards and a deep love for the work. It wasn't the only time he had issues on set. While shooting The Island of Dr. Moreau, things got even more tense. This time, Val was working with the legendary Marlon Brando, and their personalities clashed hard. The set became a place of tension, with both stars sticking to their ways. The result? A film filled with friction, but also with a unique kind of magic that only those two could bring. People on the crew said the experience was exhausting but unforgettable. Val also stirred things up off-set. In one interview, he once compared acting to being on the battlefield. That comment upset a lot of veterans who felt he was making light of something serious. Val later explained that he never meant to insult anyone. He was just trying to describe how intense acting can feel to someone who puts their whole soul into it. He may not have always chosen the best words, but he always spoke from a place of passion. Throughout all of this, the gossip, the harsh headlines, the judgment, Val never hid. He didn't pretend to be perfect. In fact, he often admitted that he wasn't. But what he wanted, more than anything, was to give every role his full heart. That honesty came through in the documentary Val, where he opened up like never before. He let people see that, yes, he had his flaws, but he also had a fire inside that never went out. And just when it seemed like he had faced it all, something even more serious happened. Like we already know, he had serious health challenges in 2015. This wasn't just about losing roles or dealing with gossip. This was about fighting for his life. At first, he stayed quiet. Maybe he didn't want the world to see him as weak. Maybe he was still trying to understand it all himself. But for an actor like Val, someone who used his voice to bring characters to life, having that voice taken away was a cruel twist. He went through surgeries, radiation, and treatments that changed his body and voice forever. But he didn't go through it alone. Mercedes and Jack stayed right there with him. They didn't leave his side. His daughter once said her dad was a fighter, someone who never let pain win. Their love helped him hold on when the days were dark and the nights felt endless. And then, something beautiful happened. Val decided to share his story. He released a documentary called Val in 2021, filled with personal home videos he'd recorded over many years. In it, he let people see who he really was. Not just the actor, but the man. He talked about the battles he'd fought, the things he'd lost, and how he still believed in the power of art to heal. His voice was damaged, but his message was stronger than ever. He made it clear that he wasn't giving up, not on himself, and not on his love for storytelling. His moment of triumph came in 2022, when he returned to the screen in Top Gun: Maverick. Seeing him again as Iceman brought tears to many eyes. Even though he could no longer speak the way he used to, Val Kilmer's presence on screen still touched hearts. Tom Cruise, who had worked with him for years, once shared how lucky he felt to act beside Val again. To him, Val wasn't just a fellow actor, he was a close friend. Someone whose energy and spirit brought life to every scene. His role in the new film wasn't just acting, it was something deeper. Val didn't need words to express himself. His eyes, his smile, even the silence around him carried emotions that couldn't be missed. What truly touched people was Val's honesty. He admitted that what scared him most wasn't failure. It was the thought of being forgotten. He had fought so hard, gone through so much, and he worried that none of it would matter in the end. But instead of letting that fear break him, he turned it into something beautiful. He discovered that being open, loving, and real with others was more powerful than anything fame could give him. So what do you think about Val Kilmer's life? Do you think he did the right thing by remaining single for the rest of his life? Let us know in the comments section. If you want more interesting revelations about your favorite celebrities, be sure to like, subscribe, and watch the next video shown on your screen. See you there!